The world went quiet the day the last box was taped shut. I stood in the echoing emptiness of my grandmother's cottage, the scent of her lavender sachets clinging desperately to the air, a ghost resisting eviction. The final legal letter, crisp and unforgiving, lay on the freshly polished pine table, a table I had just refinished for its new owners. My fiancé, Leo, had been meticulously efficient. The inheritance, the cottage, the small, hard-saved accounts, the anchored history of my family was now legally his. Our shared future, he'd said, required consolidation. My signature, signed in a fog of grief just weeks before Nana Rosa's passing, had made it all terrifyingly simple. He'd packed his designer suits and his ambitions last week, leaving for a sleek townhouse and a tech startup called Veritas Solutions. I was left with the ghost of lavender and a key that no longer fit any lock. Part 1. The Hollowing. The months that followed were a study in gray. I moved into a studio apartment that hummed with the loneliness of a refrigerator. I waitressed, my body moving on autopilot, while my mind replayed a constant, sickening reel. Nana's hands, knotted from a lifetime of kneading dough and tending soil. Leo's smooth voice, outlining financial strategy. My own naive nod. Shame was a constant companion, sour in my throat. I avoided our old neighborhood, but I'd sometimes torture myself by looking at his social media. There he was, tanned and triumphant on a minimalist balcony. #new beginnings. #gratitude. The hashtags felt like small, precise stabs. Then the drip of news began. A friend from my old corporate life sent a link with a single raised eyebrow emoji. A short business article mentioned investigations into Veritas's funding. Leo's polished image in the accompanying photo suddenly looked like a mask. Another month, another link. The townhouse was listed. Then radio silence. His profiles vanished. I felt no victory, only a colder, deeper hollow. His crumble didn't fill mine. It just proved the ground was rotten everywhere. The call came from Mrs. Gable, Nana's octogenarian neighbor, her voice crackling with indignation down the line. "Ellie, pet, it's a disgrace. He's back, skulking around the cottage like a wet weekend. And the garden, your Nana's roses, it's a crime." A perverse, painful curiosity pulled me. I drove there, my heart a trapped bird against my ribs. The cottage looked wounded, paint peeling, gutters spilling over, and Nana's kingdom, her regimented rows of beans, her chaotic, perfumed thicket of herbs and flowers, was a choked brown tangle. In the midst of it, wrestling with a refuse bag, was Leo. He was thinner, wearing a faded band t-shirt and jeans smeared with dirt. The man who'd preached about crisp potatoes and asset portfolios looked utterly, mundanely defeated. He saw my car and froze. The arrogance was gone, sand-blasted away. What remained was raw, weary bewilderment. I rolled down the window. The air smelled of decay and wet leaves. "Ellie," he said, his voice unused. I looked past him, at the strangled clematis on the trellis Nana had built with her own hands. "You're killing it," I said, my voice flat. He flinched. "I'm selling it. Quick sale, just to be done." He said done like it was the only sweet word he knew. A fury, clear and sharp as a chef's knife, cut through my numbness. He would dump this sacred, stubborn heart of my history onto the market, a distress sale for some flipper to gut. He would walk away from the ruin he'd made, again. But beneath the fury, something older stirred. Nana's voice, stubborn as time and concrete. "You don't run from a mess, Miyakata. You put on your gloves." "No," I said, the word solid, a foundation stone spoken aloud for the first time in a year. He blinked, uncomprehending. "You're not selling it to a stranger. You'll sell it to me." A short, brittle laugh escaped him. "With what?" "I'll get a loan. I'll pay you fair market value over time. We'll have a lawyer draw it up. But until it's done, I said, stepping out of the car, my eyes locking at his. "You don't get to let it die. You'll help me fix it. Every Saturday, starting with this." I pointed at the monstrous weed consuming the rosemary bush. He stared at me as if I were speaking a forgotten language, but in his eyes I saw the desperate calculations of a bankrupt man. It wasn't agreement, it was surrender. Part 2. The Reckoning in Soil and Silence. And so our grotesque and necessary ritual began. Every Saturday at 9 a.m., I arrived with 2 coffees and a list. Leo, silent and hollow-eyed, would be waiting. We spoke only of tasks. The first battlefield was the garden. I showed him how to distinguish Nana's beloved, tenacious oregano from the invasive bindweed. "See the square stem?" I said, my voice devoid of emotion. "That's the good stuff. It always comes back." He knelt, his city-soft hands digging into the cold earth, and began to pull. We worked in a silence punctuated by the rip of roots and the distant call of crows. One afternoon, wrestling with a woody, dead rose cane, he spoke to the earth. I falsified the initial growth projections just to secure the first round. I thought I could outrun it, make it real before anyone noticed. He yanked, and the cane came free with a dry snap. I wasn't a visionary, I was a forger. I didn't offer absolution. I handed him the pruning shears, cut at a 45-degree angle above an outward-facing bud. Indoors, we scraped away the modern, bland wallpaper he'd chosen, revealing the cottage's original lumpy plaster. We sanded the pine table for hours, the drum sander roaring, until the water stain of Italy and all the ghost meals were gone, leaving bare golden bone. In a cupboard he'd never emptied, behind old mason jars, I found Nana's recipe box. My breath caught. That night, in my sterile studio, I opened it. "Pasta e fagioli," the card read, in her looping script. "For a cold day. For when money is tight, but people are hungry." It was stained with broth and love. The following Saturday, I brought the ingredients: a ham hock, dried beans, a fistful of kale. While Leo repaired a rotten windowsill, I cooked. I soaked the beans, sautéed the sofrito of onion, carrot, and celery until it sweetened the entire ground floor. Let the humble pot simmer for hours. As dusk painted the kitchen in blue gold, I placed 2 bowls on the bare, hungry wood of the table. He came in, smelling of sawdust and old paint. He looked at the steaming, rustic stew, and then at me. Something in him, some last defended citadel, seemed to sigh and lower its gate. He sat. We ate. The silence was no longer brittle, but contemplative, filled with the profound language of a shared, necessary task. It was not a meal of reconciliation, but of mutual recognition, of the mess and of the labor required to face it. Part 3. The True Inheritance. Months bled into a year. The loan, a terrifying leap of faith, came through. The signing at the lawyer's office was brisk, clinical. Leo's signature was a tired scrawl. He stood, awkward, looking older. "The lavenders come back," he said, not meeting my eyes, and then he was gone. I stood alone in the cottage, my cottage. The silence was different. It was a listening silence. It held the echoes of our brutal, honest labor and the space for new sound. I planted lavender by the step, of course, basil and mint on the sunniest windowsill. I painted the walls the color of morning light. I framed Nana's recipe cards not as relics, but as instructions for living. Mrs. Gable was my first guest for property. She held her cup with both hands, tears making tracks through her powder. "She's here," she whispered, nodding at the warm walls. "She's breathing easier now." I started Nana's table, building recipe boxes for people who'd forgotten the taste of real broth, designing small kitchen gardens for balconies. I worked from the pine table, its surface now etched with new, gentler memories. Leo became an occasional, spectral presence. He'd call before coming, a formality we'd never had before. He helped assemble a new bookshelf, fix the lock on the garden shed. He told me about his job as a data analyst, the humble piece of a predictable spreadsheet. I told him about my first catering gig, a small wedding where the bride cried over the lemon almond cake. One Sunday, I hosted my first big dinner. Friends, neighbors, David from down the lane who fixed radios and had a laugh that sounded like home, his daughter Lily who loved to garden. The cottage was a symphony of clattering plates, overlapping conversations, and steam fogging the windows. Leo came, bearing a pot of thriving thyme. He stayed at the periphery, but he watched. He watched Lily, flour up to her elbows, solemnly helping me shape bread. He watched David gently guide her small hands. He saw the easy, uncomplicated love in the way David wiped a smudge of tomato from her cheek. A profound, unvarnished longing crossed Leo's face, followed by a dawning, humbled understanding. He met my gaze across the crowded, noisy room. In that look, he finally saw it. The inheritance he had tried to commodify was never the brick and mortar, the bank balance. It was this, the invisible, sacred weave of care, the everyday alchemy that turned simple ingredients into belonging and solitude into a circle. He visits less often now. He sent a plant for the garden, a resilient flowering sage, when Nana's table reached its first anniversary. The card read, "It's thriving. You should be proud." I believe he is finally trying to build his own honest table, far from here. Tonight, the cottage breathes with life. David's radio plays softly. Lily's crayon drawing of the rosemary bush is pinned to the fridge. Mrs. Gable dozes by the hearth with a half-knitted blanket in her lap. The air is rich with garlic, roasting chicken, and the sweet promise of the pear tart cooling on the counter. My inheritance was stolen, then shattered in the thief's hands. But from those fragments, I learned its true composition. It wasn't a fortress to be locked away, but a recipe to be followed daily. It was the resilience of the lavender, returning unbidden. It was the patience of the slow-simmered beans. It was the expansive welcome of a table that grew plank by plank to hold every soul who needed a place. I look at my chosen family in the lamplight, at the walls that hold our stories, and I feel not as legacy, not as a weight, but a rhythm, in the steady chop, the shared laugh, the resilient, hopeful beat of this reclaimed and thriving heart. The inheritance was never lost. I simply had to get my hands dirty and learn to grow it myself.